Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. This is lesson number 6 of Learning TradeStation. My name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education here at TradeStation. It is a pleasure to be spending this time with all of you, and I want to welcome everyone to this class. Learning TradeStation is a series of 12 unique classes that will help you utilize the power of TradeStation. Here's the schedule. We're doing lesson 6. Today is January 20th. We are halfway through the series, and we have a lot of content to cover in the next 90 minutes. Today's class is focused on strategy testing, optimization, and automation. Because of the complexity of these topics, we may not be able to, delve deeply in some of its functionality. I know a lot of you are looking for information on how to use advanced tools like Portfolio Maestro and Walk Forward Optimizer, but those are tools that we're not going to cover in this class. This is more of a basics class, like an introductory class to strategy testing. And we are going to mention the advanced tools, but we're not going to go into them in detail. I'll point out to different videos and different resources that you can use if you want to learn about those tools. We have the chat window at the bottom left. Some of you have started using it. If you have any questions about the content we're going to cover today, feel free to submit comments and questions. And I'll look at the chat window once in a while to pick up some questions and demonstrate answers live. This class is being recorded. I have said in every class that we are going to complete the series, and then I'm going to produce and upload the video so they can have the new series in the on-demand webcast on the TradeStation website. If you don't know where the webcasts are going to be uploaded, let me just share with everyone a link. That's where the archives are going to be uploaded. Right now, if you go to that link, you'll find the previous Learning TradeStation series that we did last year. The content is still relevant. In fact, the content is very similar to the classes that we're doing this time. Very important information. The following presentation is for educational purposes only. Every symbol and idea that I present here is for educational purposes only. Keep in mind that active trading is not suitable for everyone, and historical performance that we see on strategies that we are going to present today is no indication of future results. If you'd like to read more about the risks associated with online trading, here are 2 links that will cover that information. Feel free to download those to your computer if you wish to do so. Okay, let's get started. Let me show you the topics that we have today and everything that we're going to cover in the next 90 minutes. This is page 1 of the PDF for today's lesson, lesson number 6. If you don't have the PDF, it's available in the Documents section of the player, right there at the bottom right corner of the player. Let's go ahead and share that link with everyone here in the class. That is going to be our class content. Okay? If you're having difficulty, I see your comment, Vincent, downloading some of the files in the Documents folder. It may be the browser you're using or security software that doesn't allow you to download those topics or those documents. If you have any issues downloading any of the PDFs, please send me an email and I'll be glad to attach it to an email and send it to you. All right. In this class, we're going to talk about and introduce strategy trading, what it is, how you can use it, and some of the strategy components that are part of a platform. We'll help you format strategies, set all the properties for the strategy, look at the performance report, backtest using Portfolio Maestro, which I said we're not going to go into a lot of detail, but I'll show you some things or some resources that you can use to learn about that tool. We'll go over strategy optimization, that we'll cover here, and then I'll give you some pointers about the Walk Forward Optimizer. But towards the end, I'll show you how you can automate strategies so that you don't miss out on any trading opportunities by having something on TradeStation that is monitoring market activity. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to switch over here to my TradeStation platform. I've stripped my TradeStation from all the workspaces and all the bars that are shown on top, like the order bar and the position graph bar. We'll bring those back if we need them. But I wanted to concentrate on strategy trading and the tools that are available for you to do some strategy testing. What is strategy trading? Strategy trading is just a way of you telling TradeStation your trading methodology or trading idea and be able to backtest that idea against historical data so that you have an indication how the strategy performs historically. And that way, build some confidence about how the strategy may behave going forward. Of course, when we look at past historical performance, that is no indication that the strategy will behave the same way going forward. But if we're able to find a strategy that we can test against historical, data and find a strategy that gives us consistent results historically, we are more confident about those strategy rules, and we have a little bit more confidence about trading that strategy going forward. So we're going to look at all the tools that are available on the platform that will help you develop your own personal strategy and all the different functionality that it's on the platform to gauge and be able to determine if a strategy is sound or not. Perfect. First thing, let's bring up a chart. I'm going to come here to my trading apps and bring up a chart because strategy trading is always done on a chart. So you do have to start off with a chart. It doesn't matter what symbol we have on the screen, as long as it's something that we can test. You can do back testing on stocks. You can do back testing on futures. You can do back testing on Forex, and it's all the same functionality. So even though I may focus on a particular symbol, just keep in mind it doesn't matter what symbol you use. The functionality is there for all asset classes. This is a chart of Apple. We can do a back test on Apple. That's fine. Let's go ahead and turn this chart into a daily chart. Daily chart of Apple. Perfect. On page 2 of the PDF, we have the subtopic or the subheading, Using Strategy Components. TradeStation has dozens of strategies that are designed around popular indicators. Those are already pre-programmed. You don't have to be concerned about the rules and instructions because they are built in. Let's give you an example. First, before going to strategies, I'm going to set up my chart with a popular indicator. Let me insert an indicator. Let's go ahead and choose something like a moving average 2-line. Okay, 2-line moving average. I can put a check here on prompt for format, or I can use the default parameters. Let's go ahead and format the strategy. Format the indicator. By default, the moving average is using 9 and 18. You can change those values. You can keep them the same. It doesn't really matter what numbers you use as long as you use something that is appropriate for the market you're trading. For now, let's just use default parameters and see what numbers do we get, okay? This is a fast length of 9 periods and its low length of 18 periods. On a daily chart is a 9-day moving average against an 18-day moving average. Let's click OK. Those are the 2 lines on my screen. They're working together. What we're looking for, if we're looking at this as a strategy, that we can trade, what we're looking for is the crossovers of those 2 moving averages. When the fast, which is my cyan line, crosses above the magenta, that is a bullish signal. But when the fast crosses below the magenta, that is a bearish signal. So if you had to trade this indicator, you would take a long trade when the fast crosses above this low, and you would take a short trade when the fast crosses below this low. Okay, very straightforward. There's no complexities here, but we're going to test this idea to see how it behaves. In the Insert Strategy dialog, and that's where you go to find the strategies that are built into the platform, let's go to Insert Strategy. And here you find all the strategies that are designed and that are based on popular indicators, including Bollinger Bands, MACD, stochastics, RSI. Doesn't matter what popular indicator you choose. we probably have a strategy already built around it. Han, I see your question about back testing on options. You can do a back test on single options. We don't have the capability of doing a back test on option spreads, but if you want to back test a strategy on a single option, you may. All right. Okay. And Nayan, I see your comment about maximizing my screen. I'm using a size that it is set for recording purposes. So if you still have some area around my TradeStation, it's probably because I'm using a size that will produce the best resolution possible when it goes to YouTube. So I may not be able to maximize it here, but you can play around with the settings or the buttons on your player to fit and no fit to see if it gives you a better view. All right. I'm going to scroll down here on the list of strategies, and I'm going to find some strategies that are based on moving average. I have 4 moving average cross strategy. In fact, not only 4, I have 8 that are based on moving average. We have the moving average cross, we have the moving average 2-line cross, and we have the moving average 3-line cross based on the moving average indicators that we have in the indicator list. The moving average cross right here on top is just monitoring the price activity as it crosses above and below the moving averages. That's not necessarily what we want. The strategy we want is the one that has a 2-line cross, because what we're looking for is the 2 lines to cross. And there's 2 of those strategies, one that has an LE and the other has an SE. LE in strategy components is a long entry, and SE in strategy components is a short entry. If you look at the strategies that are here for the moving average cross, we have 2 additional letters, LX and SX, which are the exits, long exit and short exit. So when you come to the list of strategy components here in TradeStation, every strategy most of the time will have those 2 letters at the very end so you can know what the strategy was designed to do. What action is it going to take when you put it on the chart? In this case, I'm going to do a multiple selection by highlighting moving average 2-line cross, LE and SE. To do a multiple selection, you just have to hold down the control key as you're clicking on the different items you want to select. Okay, let's go ahead and uncheck prompt for format. We'll come here to the format strategy dialog in a little moment, but I'll just click OK. As soon as you click OK, the strategy goes on the chart. You see, it's not a complex process. As soon as we put the strategy in the chart, it finds every historical instance where the strategy would have entered a trade based on the moving average crossovers. Now, one thing that I want everybody to keep in mind, you do not need the indicator or the 2-line moving average indicator for the strategy to work. The only reason why I put the indicator in place or in there is so that you can see where the crossovers are and see if the strategy follows it. But it's not required. If you just want to go straight to the strategy and put it on the chart, it's fine. But as a developer of a strategy, I always like to have the indicator so that I can see a visual of the rule, where the crossovers occur and see if the strategy is responding to it. Let's go ahead and try to identify some of the pieces here. I'm going to zoom in some of the areas here by using the magnifying glass that is available on my toolbar that has a plus sign. It'll allow me to draw a box around an area, clicking and dragging so that I can concentrate in that area. It just zooms in. You can see how the 2 moving averages are crossing, and they kind of cross in this bar right here. And you can see how the trade is generated for the following bar. The cyan, which is my fast average, crosses above, and a signal is entered onto my chart. Let's talk about the signal a little bit. First of all, you have an arrow pointing to the candle. It tells you that on that candle there's an entry. It tells you the name of the strategy that generated the signal. This is the moving average 2 cross LE. It also tells you what your net position is. This is a positive 100, which means that you are long 100 shares. Of course, this number can be changed, but the default when you put in a strategy on the chart is 100 shares. And then there's a little marker. It's quite small, but it tells you exactly at what price point the strategy entered that trade. That's your fill price right there. Let me zoom out by using the magnifying glass that has a minus inside of it. And you can see that I get a signal every time that there's a crossover. Let me zoom in this area right here by using the zoom in. Okay, look at the crossover here. The cyan moves below the magenta, but it seems like that happened somewhere in between here. We didn't get confirmation of that crossover until this bar. You would think, well, why didn't the strategy generate the trade here right after the crossover occurred, right? It waited one bar to actually generate the trade. By the way, the signal that you see here, notice how it has a negative 100, which means that it's short 100. So this is a strategy that it's a reversal strategy. Let me backtrack a little bit. Let me zoom out. And you can see how the entries are connected one to the other. And there's a dotted line connecting the entries, showing you if it's a profitable trade or a losing trade. Whenever you see a cyan line or a cyan dotted line, that's a profitable trade. But then I see a dotted red line, which is a losing trade. But historically, I can see every single trade that was generated by the strategy using those rules. So, on a daily chart, we have 2 years of historical data, and the strategy will use all the data that's loaded on the chart. So depending on how far back you want your back test to go, just be sure to load all that data on the chart. I'm just going to use the default, which is 2 years, but if you want to do a back test on 5 years, load the 5 years of data and then insert the strategy. The strategy will only run on the data that's loaded on the chart. So if you give it 1 year, it'll be a 1-year back test. If you give it 10 years, it'll be a 10-year back test. Okay, so we find the signals automatically. We were talking about the triggering of the signal. So when I went over here to this short entry, and I looked at the short entry that's right here, it seems like there's a little delay because we do get the crossover somewhere here in the middle, and on this bar, this green candle, the crossover has already occurred. However, the signal is not generated until the following bar. Why is that? The reason for that is because by default, the strategy is evaluated on the close of every bar. So it had to wait until this green candle closed right here to confirm that the crossover was true. That's just a default calculation. It happens on the close of the bar. If you want to change the calculation and say and tell the strategy, hey, I don't want to wait until the close. As soon as you see the criteria being met, I want that signal to be triggered. How do I change that? We are changing the nature of the way the strategy is calculating. And if you look at the information that's on page 4, at the very top of the page, it talks about this feature, which is changing the calculation of the strategy. I'm going to change it here on the screen so you can see what it looks like. I'm going to go to Format Strategy. Let me go here, Format Strategy. You can go through the menus here, Format Strategy. The way that I usually do it, which is my shortcut, or the shortcut that I prefer, that I like, is double-clicking on one of the signals. It doesn't matter which one you choose. Just double-click on one of those strategy signals, and it'll take you directly to the Format Strategy dialog without having to go through the menus, you know? So I double-click on this red arrow, and it takes me to the Format Analysis Techniques and Strategies dialog. I see the 2 strategies listed here, and every strategy that you insert will be listed here on this dialog. Now you do have a Format button here on the right-hand side, and it'll format the strategy that is highlighted. So right now, I'm highlighting the long entry. I go to Format, and there's a few tabs here that we are going to look at. First of all, Inputs. These are where you change the parameters of a strategy. Remember the length of the moving averages? It's 9 and 18. Those are default parameters, but you can change them. Just remember that if you change the parameters on the indicator, on the lines that are on the chart, that does not transfer those numbers to the strategy. So you have to modify the parameters in the strategy. Okay, keep that in mind so that you can keep the strategy in sync with your indicator. But what I wanted to point out to is the calculation tab. This is the way that the strategy is being calculated. And there's a setting here that's called Enable Intra-Bar Order Generation and Calculation. It's called intra-bar order generation because it allows the strategy to generate a trade intra-bar, not wait until the close. So this is where you change that behavior. You got some additional functionality here, like limiting the number of entries in a bar. You know, when you turn this intra-bar order generation, the strategy has the capability of generating an order every single tick, which is to a certain extent scary, because if every single tick meets the criteria, you can have hundreds and hundreds of different trades every single bar. So there's some limits here, like limit entries for all signals in this strategy to once per bar, which is the one that is default. Once per bar. Just do it once per bar. If you want multiple entries, you can do that and specify the number. But once I click OK, and I do the same thing for the short entry, I have to go to Format and change the calculation because this is a setting that is individual to strategies. I click OK. So now I've set the properties, or I've set the format of the two strategies, and I click on Close. Now take a look at what happened here on my entry. You see the change? Do you see how the trade or the signal, instead of being on this candle where it was before, now is pushed forward one? You see how the crossover occurs? The bar opens and the signal or the trade happens on that same bar where the crossover is. It doesn't wait until the close for confirmation. It does it automatically. Now, which setting is better? There's no one setting better than the other. It all depends on what you're looking for and how the strategy is evaluating the conditions. So at a point, you have to determine, do I want my strategy to wait until the close for confirmation, or do I want my strategy to trigger the order as soon as the conditions are met? That's just a decision that you have to make depending on what the strategy does and what it's looking for. I'm going to come back here to my strategy format and disable that functionality. Okay, I'm just going to leave it as a default, which is calculating at the close of the bar. Okay, notice how the entry now it's moved one bar over because it waited until the close of the bar, and it generates the order for the following bar. Okay, so just wanted to throw out that setting so you know that the calculation of the strategy can be changed, and then you can make it behave differently. Perfect. Richard, your question about changing the strategy to a 5-minute bar, I could do that. If I change the chart to a 5-minute, the strategy will recalculate. And all the calculations, including the moving averages, are going to be done on a 5-minute bar. If you want to use a daily moving average, but put that daily average on a 5-minute bar, that requires multi-data charting. We talked about it yesterday. We created a chart with multiple symbols, and you have to set one symbol to 5-minute and the other symbol to daily, and just have the moving average calculated off the daily. That's the only way to do that. But it is possible, yes. Okay, let me go ahead and zoom out. And we're back on our strategy backtest. As soon as you have your strategy in place, you can bring up what's called a strategy performance report, which is mentioned in your PDF. It's mentioned on page 8. The strategy performance report. It's a report that is generated by compiling all the trading activity that is generated historically. It's going to take every single trade, put it into a report, and tells us if the strategy made money or not. To view the strategy performance report, there's two ways to do it. The very first toolbar button on the strategy toolbar is called Strategy Performance Report. You can see it right here on top, Strategy Performance Report. You can also go to the View menu, and you have access to the Strategy Performance Report. Doesn't matter which way you go, it'll bring up the same report. Let's go ahead and take a look at the report initially. All right. This is what the report looks like. We got a lot of values here that are variations of the same profit. For example, we have total net profit, then you have something that's called select total net profit, and then you have something called adjusted total net profit. If you want to hide these other variations of net profit, you can come here at the top right, and there's a button that says collapse. Collapse will collapse a lot of those variations of the same calculation and give you just the major calculations of the strategy. In the strategy backtest, and you can see here on the title bar of this performance report the date that it covers, from January 21st, 2014 to January 20th, 2016. So we have 2 years worth of historical data. In 2 years, the strategy lost money. My total net profit is a negative 394. My long trades made some money, but my short trades lost money. So notice how it divides long trades versus short trades. It also tells you the total number of trades. There were 28 trades in total in my strategy. 14 were long trades, 14 were short trades. Out of all the 28 trades, 32% of those trades were profitable. Only 32%. Out of all the trades, I had 19 losing trades and 9 winning trades. My average winning trade, here's my average losing trade. We have a setting here called maximum consecutive winning trades 3. Now, one of the things that I wanted to point out is, looking at this report, I know that my long side, or the long trades, did better than the short trades. So if I go back to my strategy, let me show you something really interesting you can do. You have the 2 entry strategies on the graph. So we know that this strategy, it's working more like a reversal strategy, where if you're in a short trade, it'll reverse you to a long trade. And if you're a long trade, it'll reverse you to a short trade. So it always keeps you in the market. It's flipping you back and forth between long trades and short trades, which is fine. There's no exits. But we know from the report that our long trades are doing better than our short trades. Why not disabling the short trades and see if we get better results? Let me show you a quick way that we can do that. I'm going to double click on one of the arrows to go to Format Strategy. The 2 strategies are listed here, and if you look, I'm going to scroll here to the right, and you're going to have some little drop downs under Buy and Sell Short. The different components are turned on for buying and selling short. For selling short, notice that it's turned on. But since my sell shorts are doing bad, I can come here to the drop down, and instead of turning it on for a sell short, I'm just going to exit only. It says exit only, which means that instead of entering the market, just use the same criteria for my shorts, but exit my long trades. Do not go short, just exit only. If I do that and I go to close, take a look at what happens. Now I don't have red arrows, but now I only have blue and I have white. White arrows in TradeStation strategies are exits. Okay, it's using the moving average to cross short entry to just exit the market. Notice that it's not taking you short. Now if I go back to my performance report by clicking on this very top toolbar button, take a look. Now we don't have a loss. We have a profit of $1,700 because my short trades have been zeroed out. There's no short trades. It's an interesting way of just going to the strategy very quickly and disabling one side of the strategy. Perfect. Not really sure I understand your question, Vincent, when you say did it buy on the green. This is when we disable the short entry. We didn't disable it. We turned the short entry into just an exit. So now it's just taking long trades. There's no short trades on the screen. Just long trade and then exit. Long trade, exit. If I come back here to the strategy and I can turn that I can turn the sell short on again, and it'll reverse back and forth. Now, okay, I see what you're asking, Vincent. We turned on intra-bar order generation just to show you how the strategy can generate the trade right away. I think we were looking at, let me zoom in, we were looking at this trade in particular. Yes, remember that we were looking at this trade. The crossover happens on this candle, but no, it waits until the following bar because we disabled intra-bar order generation. But this signal right here is not a short trade, it's just an exit. It takes us out of the market. Okay, Pat, I see your question. Did you take into account commissions? Very good question, Pat. We're going to take a look at some of the settings, like formatting the strategy properties. On page 4, the half portion, the half bottom portion of the page, it says setting strategy properties. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to format the strategy and come here to properties for all, which is the button below format. Properties for all are properties that apply to all the strategies that are listed here. When I go to properties for all, I get 3 tabs. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the general tab, because here is where you take into account commissions and slippage and some other interesting calculation. First of all, commissions. Here on the top left, you have commissions, dollars per trade. If you know what your commissions what your commissions are per trade, just specified here under the dollar box. If you have commissions per share or contract, if you're in a per share contract, you put them in here. Let's assume that you are in a per share commission plan and you're being billed 1 penny per share. I put in my commission in there. Slippage, if you're dealing with market orders or where there is a movement in price, if you're not familiar with the term slippage, remember that when you send an order to the market, you may think that you're going to get one price, but in reality, when the market order comes back and it gives you a confirmation, the order price may be completely different than what you expected. And sometimes that slippage goes against you. Very rarely it goes in your favor. So position slippage is a cost on strategy trading because you are taking into account the fact that you may send a strategy order, but when it comes back, it's a different price. The price has changed. See, the strategy doesn't see that. The strategy is very precise. If you want a price and it sees that price on the chart, it assumes that you get filled at that price, when in reality, in the real market, the story could be totally different. Okay, so you can put in a slippage amount there. When I click OK, and I click OK, now the strategy is using commissions. Where do I see commissions in my strategy performance report? Well, when I go back to my strategy performance report, I get similar total net profit. But when I come here to my trade list, there's a tab here at the bottom, the third tab, trade list. I see a list of all the trades that were generated. If I scroll to the right, you're going to see how the commission is factored in. $1 to get in, $1 to get out. Why is it $1? Because I'm just trading 100 shares. If I come here to the properties of the strategy, let me come back here and go to properties for all. I do have my commission in there, but if you wanted to increase your trade size, you do that on this same tab, but you look at the bottom right and notice how there's a fixed shares for the trade size. And I can say instead of 100, I'm going to trade 500. And when you click OK and OK, this recalculates. See, my performance report recalculates, and when I scroll here to the right-hand side, now my commission is $5. A penny per share is recalculated and it's taken into account. When I go to my performance summary, it did, of course, significantly better because we increased the trade size. Before we were trading 100 shares, now we're trading 500. So in a profitable performance report, of course, that increases our profits. Okay. Larry, you make a good question. What is a good minimum performance for initial evaluation? It all depends on the strategy that you're trading, you know. It is said that if you are, testing a strategy that is trend following, in this case, the moving average strategy is a trend following strategy, you want about 30 or 40% of your trades to be profitable. So you have a smaller percentage of profitable trades. Why? Because it's expected that in a trend following strategy, your winning trades are going to be much larger than your losing trades. So that's why a small percentage of winning trades is acceptable. But when you are testing a strategy that is an oscillating strategy, then that percentage needs to be higher because now you're factoring in having more winning trades than losing trades, but the profits per trade are less. So it all depends on the type of strategy you're trading. I would say here the total number of trades is very low. 14 trades is not a significant or a meaningful collection of trades to base a decision on. Most of the time, traders are looking for over 30 or 40 trades to have something that is more meaningful than just 14. So it's a lot of things to take into account. There's no hard numbers or numbers that you can follow in order to backtest and have a realistic backtest result. But there's some guidelines out there that allow you to choose and look at these numbers from the right perspective. Okay. George, your question is an interesting one. Can we have the strategy show only the entry points and not generate the trade? Up to this point, the strategy is not generating any trades. These are all signals. So if you're looking for just displaying the entry points, that's exactly what the strategy backtest is doing. In no form, the strategy is turned on right now, so there's no risk in trading any of the strategy that we are applying to the chart. We're going to get to automating a strategy and generating signals, but at this point, everything is turned off. Everything is historical and is just showing us the signals where the strategy would have entered or exited. Okay, let's look at some other segments here. We turned off the short side of this strategy. Let's go ahead and combine this with a stop loss to see if we can trigger a stop loss. If we go to Insert Strategy, there's different components here that I can use. I can say, give me a stop loss strategy. And you have a stop loss that works only for long positions and short positions. The one that is here, the one that I'm highlighting, works for long trades because it has a check mark here under sell, and it has a check mark here under cover. So it also works for short trades. If I click OK, now if you look at what happens in my chart, the stop loss sometimes is triggered. In fact, it seems like for every single trade, my stop loss kicks in. Only at a certain point, there is a moving average cross short entry. Let's go ahead and see how that affected my strategy. Okay, you can see how it gave back a lot of my net profit. My percent profitability went down to 14%, very low. We have something really bad here. When I look at strategy performance, I tend to look at this number a lot, consecutive losing trades. Right now it's set to 9. That means that in the backtest of my strategy, the strategy lost 9 times consecutively. One trade after another trade was a losing trade 9 times. That's a big number to digest. Why? Because this can turn into a psychological barrier to trading any trading idea. Because how many losing trades can you tolerate, you know? When you're doing a back test, I mean, that number may not seem that big, but when you have to live through the strategy losses and you're trading this with real money and you lose one time after another, then you start doubting yourself and you say, is this the right strategy? Is this really working for me? So whenever I do a strategy back test, I always look at how many losing trades did it do consecutively, because that is going to tell you if you're going to be able to, stick to your strategy rules regardless of how many losing trades there are consecutively. I feel that 9 is way too high. I would have given up on the strategy after the third or fourth trade. So I have to work with the strategy to make sure that I get that number down, because if this happens in real time, I'm pretty sure I would have given up on the strategy. Okay? But what I do have is a stop loss in place. I have that stop loss in place that I can choose to modify. Let's go ahead and double click on my stop loss. It takes me to the list of strategies again. I'll highlight the stop loss and I'll click on format. So you can see what the parameters are for the stop loss. When I go to the inputs, I notice how the amount is set to 1. So for this example, if Apple went in the opposite direction by 1 point, the stop loss kicks in. That's exactly what that 1 means, which could be a appropriate amount for Apple. Maybe it's not. How can you tell if 1 point is appropriate for Apple or not? You may be comfortable with doing 1 point. If you think about the shares or the number of shares that you're trading, we're trading 500 shares. So 1 point per share would represent a $500 stop. Is that something that seems in line with what you want the strategy to do? Now, the position basis parameter that's here allows you to calculate the stop loss based on a per share basis or a whole amount. So if you change that position basis to true, now you can base your amount not on a per share basis but on the whole position. So I can say if it loses $500, I want to get out. If I click OK and close, this is exactly the same calculation. We didn't change the value of the stop loss. We just changed the way that it was expressed. Before we had a 1 point per share. Now we have $500, which gives you the exact same results. Let's go back here to the settings, and let me show you one feature which is called optimization. Optimization is explained in your PDF on page 10. And I introduce it here because sometimes we need a little help trying to determine what value would have given you better results on a strategy. Sometimes we have no idea. Right here, we just used the default parameter, which was 1 point or $500. But what if $300 would have given us better results? Or maybe a higher number, maybe $1,000 would have given us better results. How do we monitor our stop loss here? Well, let's go ahead and click on Format. And I'm going to highlight the amount. And TradeStation offers this functionality called Optimize, which will allow you to run through a series of different tests to identify the optimal parameters for this backtest. I'm going to click on Optimize, and I'm going to tell TradeStation to test from $25 all the way to $1,000 in increments of 25. Very straightforward, very simple test. It's going to test $25, then it's going to test 50, then 75, all the way to 1,000. And out of all these different scenarios, it's going to tell me which value would have given you the best results historically. When I click OK, it tells me a warning message. It says, I'll just parrot the optimized values you have entered for the selected input may be too large for the current max bars back setting. Would you like to continue with the current input optimization range? Confusing message if you're not familiar with some of the terminology here, like max bars back setting. We'll talk about it in a little moment. But for now, I'm just going to click on yes. I want to continue. It's going to do that range. When I click OK on this dialog, I can see that there's a test count of 40. So there's 40 possible stop loss amounts that this is going to test. Now this is going to go very quickly because the computer is going to be able to do 40 tests very quickly within seconds. As soon as I click optimize, the chart blanks out and it returns. You can see that it only took, maybe 1 second or fraction of a second to do the whole series of calculation. What you didn't see is that it actually already found the optimal stop value. In fact, it applied that optimal value to the strategy without me even doing anything. If I go back to format strategy, you can see how the stop loss was changed to 100. I did have 500 before, but it seems like the strategy found that 100 would have given me better results. If I go to the strategy performance report, I can see that that is completely true. I'm not sure if you remember, but my net profit was down in the 1700s. Now it's 6,500. One bad thing is that my percent profitability is still down in 14%, which I still think it's very low. And the number of trades in this historical backtest is also very low. My consecutive losing trades still 9. So even though it may seem like, oh, this made the strategy better, I still have a lot of work to do. So always come back here to the performance report and look at all the values as a whole. Do not concentrate on this big number on top. It's not all about total net profit. It's about how robust the strategy is so that you can, use it and trade it forward. So that's not, the big concern is not how much money it's making, but if you're able to trade this going forward and have, profitable results. If I take a look at other tabs here at the bottom, we have my performance graphs. Yeah, this doesn't look very nice because of the lack of trades. You can see the trades down here. We have 14 trades, and this is our P&L. At one moment we were making $4,000, and then it just jumped over here to above 7,000. Then we had some losing trades, gave back some of that profit, and we're a little slightly above the $6,000 range. But again, this is not, the idea of me showing you this is not because I'm giving you the strategy to trade. I'm just showing you the tools that are available in TradeStation so you can take steps towards developing your own strategy. Okay, let's go ahead and see some of the questions that are here so that I can take them. Nayan, I see your question about moving average strategies. If you wanted to take a long trade, if the price is above the 200 moving average, that's very simple to do. It's a clear example. Let me remove some of the strategies here. So I'm going to remove by just clicking on the arrows and pressing delete. It gives you a list of the strategies that are listed. You can select them all and click OK. That removes the strategies from the screen. I can remove the 2 moving averages and insert just one. Insert indicator, moving average one line. I'm going to make the indicator a 200 bar moving average. There it is. That's my 200 bar moving average. There's not a lot of historical data here. There's only 2 years. One thing that I didn't talk about is max bars backsetting. You see how the 2-line moving average seems to be cut off right here? It's because it's a 200 bar moving average. So it actually had to use the first 200 bars of this chart to start calculating that moving average. That's why it may seem like the moving average is cut off, but no, it actually needed all that data beforehand in order to calculate. But if you load more data, let's say that I want to load 10 years of data. Now I have 10 years of data here on the screen, and I can trade this strategy by just inserting it on the screen. If you insert strategy and you go to moving average cross, long entry, and long exit, you can choose those two strategies. Remember that when you insert the strategy, you have to make the strategy the same as your indicator. So now I can come here to my long entry and make it 200, and then come here to my exit, make it 200, and then close. Now you do get this error. It's good that it happened because I'm going to explain max bars back setting. It says, the error says try to reference back more bars than allowed by the current max bars back setting. I did mention the term before. It is asking us to increase the max bars back setting. My indicator, the cyan line that I inserted there, set to 200, automatically detects how many bars it needs. It knows that it needs 200, so it uses 200. The strategy, on the other hand, doesn't know, cannot adjust itself. It is hard-coded to only use 50 bars. So strategies by default only use 50 bars. If you give it a parameter that is above 50, like in this case, we're using 200, you're going to get this error because you're using more than what is allowed for the strategy. How do we fix that? Well, I know the strategies are in there because I put them in there. They're just turned off. I'm going to come here to Format Strategies. I see the strategies there. I see that the status is turned off. I see the input values is 200. So before I turn them on, I want to go here to Properties for All. That's where the max bars back setting is. Properties for All. And here on the General tab, if you look at the bottom left, maximum number of bars study will reference is set to 50. That doesn't update automatically. So if you have a calculation that uses 200, you have to come here and change that to at least the number of bars that it needs. I just need 200 bars to calculate the moving average. I'm setting this number to 200. Do not put a number here that is higher, because a lot of TradeStation users, what they think is that I'm going to put here a number like 2,000 or 3,000 just to make sure that I'm safe and it doesn't give me any errors. But remember that the number that you put in here, that's exactly the number of bars that are going to be reserved at the beginning of the chart. They're not going to be used for the strategy. They're not going to be even counted. So you don't want to put in a number here that is excessive, because then you are just reserving all the bars for calculation. You won't see anything. So just put in there a number that is the bare or the maximum that the strategy needs. This is 200 bars. I click OK, and then I click OK. Oh, I forgot to turn on the strategy. Let me go back to Format Strategy. To turn on the strategy, just highlight the strategy and click on Status here on the right-hand side. I click on the second one. I click on Status again, and you can see how the status is turned on. Click on Close, and now I see my exits and I see my entries based on a 200 bar moving average. If I go back to my strategy performance report, go to my performance summary, this is a back test on a period of 10 years. In a period of 10 years, the strategy did very well by exiting and entering based on a 200 bar moving average. Of course, there's no stop loss. There's no risk management. If you look at the largest losing trade here, we have a trade that lost $3,500. Is that the way that we want to leave it? That's something that that's a decision that you'd have to make. I did see a question here about ATRs, and Paul has submitted that question about ATRs. So if I submit a stop here, I can go to the Insert menu and go to Strategy. We have some ATR strategies. If I go here to the top, here they are. ATR Trailing LX. This is a trailing stop based on ATR. So I know that somebody else asked about trailing stop George asked about trailing stops. You have all those strategy components available here. We have a trailing stop based on ATRs. If you just want a regular trailing stop, we have one that's called dollar trailing based on a dollar amount. And then you have one that's called percent trailing, right here, percent trailing, which is based on a percentage. Let me go ahead and use an ATR, and you can see how this looks. I'm going to do a ATR trailing LX. If I format the ATR, I format this. This is the number of bars that are being used to calculate the ATR, and the number of ATRs is set to 3. 3 times the average true range. If I use just the default settings and I click on close, I'm pretty sure, let me see if there's any ATRs here. Here we go. You see that ATR kicked in, and I can see my trade being triggered right there. It seems like it generated some profit, but then it trailed down based on ATR, and it exited my trade. If I go to my performance report, you can see the results up there. You can see how my losing trade was, instead of $3,500, now it's only $1,000. So it did some good to the strategy. What happens is that when you have a stop, or you have a profit target, or if you have some way of managing your position, it makes your strategy a little bit more robust, because now you're managing your risk. You're not exposed to unlimited price movements. You have some way of exiting your trade if something goes against you or something goes in your favor. Richard, I see your question for stocks, for stock splits. TradeStation automatically adjusts the data on stocks splits. So once the stock splits, all the historical data is back adjusted. And Ronald, that's very true. If your performance report is negative on 100 shares, doesn't matter if you increase the number of shares, it's still going to be negative. That's very true. You're just magnifying your losses. Phil, your question about, are the trades listed in chronological order? If you come here to your trade list, yes, they are. I have a total of 11 trades. They start off at the very beginning of the graph. That was trade number 1, was in the year 2008. And the most recent trade, closed trade, was in the year 2015. And you can see what signals generated those trades, the price that you entered and exited, what the profit was for each one of those trades, and all that interesting information. Roger, let's talk about account size. This question is about account size. So when I go to my performance summary, there is a value here that says account size required, and it says $1,000. It's not realistic, but what it represents is that how much money is needed to enter a trade. And that's what this means. It doesn't mean that that's your initial capital. If you come over here to the to the properties of the strategy, and we go to properties for all, there's a setting here called initial capital, which is set to $100,000. If you have $100,000 in your account, it would be appropriate to keep $100,000 here. If you have what we require as the minimum funding, which is $5,000, you can say my initial capital was $5,000, which is initial funding for my equities account. And when I click OK, and I click on OK, the performance report uses that number, not in account size required. Notice how account size required remains the same, but it uses the calculation to give you an annual rate of return. So it does have an 8% rate of return. And the return on initial capital is 111%, because we started off with $5,000 and we made $5,500, which is 111%. So only a few fields in the performance report use that initial capital, but it doesn't mean that it's going to limit the strategy from buying and selling. The strategy, it's most of the time going to assume that you can place any trade. Ronald, your question about can the strategies include the sizes of time and sales prints to trigger trades? Interesting question. And to answer that, I'm going to say yes. There are some advanced easy language objects that allow you to capture time and sales information, including trade size. And you can have a strategy look at the size of trades that are coming in order to trigger your own trades. Now, do we have any strategies that are built in that actually do that? We don't. But the possibility is there. Yes, it is possible. All right. So, Nayan, I see your clarification. It's the same functionality, but you just have to tweak your moving averages to do exactly what you want them to do. Alfred, if you need the PDFs, just send me an email and I'll send them to you. Right now, we just have lesson number 6 right there in the documents section. Phil, your question about the ATR and what it's doing. In TradeStation, when you go to insert a strategy, and let's say that you have this ATR trailing that we use right now, I always recommend for you to go to definition. This brings up the help topics in TradeStation, and it opens up the document that explains the ATR trailing. If this is not enough information, let's say that you still have some doubts about how it's calculated, there's plenty of information using, a search engine like Google. You search for ATR and you have tons of information on how you can use ATR to exit the markets. Okay. And Phil, yes, his question's about we have the strategy in play with the ATR, but you can also plot the ATR on the chart. The same way that we have the moving average and the strategy calculated with the same parameters, you can insert an indicator that gives you ATR on the chart. Here it is, average true range. I click OK, and then you have the average true range right there at the bottom. Okay, for those that don't have my email address, I'm submitting that on my chat, on the chat. That here it is. Okay. Let's talk about some other items before we have about 20 minutes before the class is over, and I wanted to make sure that I point out to those different settings so that you can keep them in mind. There's a lot of properties that you can change for the strategy. Here on properties for all, we talked about commissions. Very important that you submit or include commission cost. Here at the bottom right, we talked about the size of your trade. In the strategy backtest, you can do a fixed share contract units, or you can do $1 per trade, and TradeStation will calculate it based on your settings, round down to the nearest 100 shares, and then you have a minimum number of shares contracts. So you do have a little control over the strategy and what it's doing. Here on the top right, we have something called position limits. This is for pyramiding. And let me explain what this does. Let me go ahead and cancel out of this first and click OK here. Let me remove some of the indicators here, remove here, remove the strategy, and let's insert something like the Bollinger Band. Insert indicator, and this is Bollinger Band right here. Very straightforward indicator. It calculates standard deviations above and below from a moving average. What we're looking is for penetration of the bands and returned inside the channel. For those that are not familiar with the Bollinger Bands, it is said that 95% of all the price points are going to be within the two bands. So what we're looking for is for events or areas where the bands or the prices are going outside of the bands. I'm going to insert the strategy that comes with this, which is my two Bollinger Band strategy, the long entry and the short entry. And I'm just using default parameters, but you can see how it goes in and out based on those penetrations of the band. Now let me show you something interesting. Let's go over here, forward. And if you look at right here at the current trade, we are in a long trade. So right here, the bands went below the red and it crossed inside, and it got us into a trade right here. It went below the band, then returned inside, it got us in a trade. But then it happened again. Right here, it went outside the band, inside, but it didn't generate a trade. It happened right here again. It went outside the band, inside, but it didn't generate a trade. Because the strategy by default only trades one trade, only generates one trade in one direction at a time. So since we are already in a long trade, it doesn't continue to trade. But you can change that. I go back again to properties. So I double click on the signal, properties for all. And you can say enable pyramiding and allow up to 3 entry orders in the same direction as the currently held position. So if the criteria is met once, it gives you 500 shares. But if it happens again, it gives you another 500 shares. So now you have 1,000. And it happens a third time, then it gives you another 500, so you have 1,500 shares. Let's see how that looks on the chart. Click OK, and OK, and there it is. You can see now we have another signal that says 1,000. Now we have another signal that says 1,500. That's called pyramiding, where the strategy is continuously meeting the same condition over and over, and it's just increasing your position size as the condition remains true. Phil, I see your comment about the ATR. We may not have, the specific ATR that you're looking for. We do have the indicator parabolic SAR that's available in the list of indicators. But if you're looking for the ATR to display differently, or if you want to see it, in relationship to your trades and have it move as, as the ATR trails, we can modify an indicator and probably see it on the chart as you're looking, as I see that you're looking for specific functionality. So we may not have exactly what you're looking for, but it can be created. The same way that we have, those objects that handle time and sales and trade size, those are available as well. Okay, let me go back here to properties. Remember that you can use the max bars back setting. This is maximum number of bars studyable reference. Especially if you're using parameters greater than 50, just keep it, in your mind that if you're using something greater than 50, you have to come back here and increase this number manually. All right. In the backtesting, you can modify the way that the backtest assumes fills of the orders. I did say earlier that the strategy assumes that you have a perfect fill. Fill the entire order when trade occurs at the limit price or better. So as soon as you see the price, the strategy will fill it. But if you want to, simulate realistic behavior, you can come here and choose a different setting. For example, fill the entire order when trade price exceeds the limit price. Okay, not only be content with meeting the price, I want it to exceed just to make sure that I do get a fill. Or, do the fill based on volume. Only do the fill if a specific number of shares are traded. So it's interesting that we have this functionality that allow you to, change the way that the strategy looks at limit orders or market order fill assumptions. Good. But now, if you develop a strategy that you are, that you like, and you want to automate it. Now this is where we're going to talk about turning on a strategy, which is, there's different levels of turning it on. I did say earlier that when you insert a strategy, it's only for display. This is only historical backtest. It's not trading for you. But if you do want to turn it on, there's 2 levels. Let me go here to Format Strategy, and the automation checkbox is right there at the bottom. There's different checkboxes here. The first one, I'm checking it. It says Generate Strategy Orders for display in Trade Manager's Strategy Orders tab. Somebody in a previous class asked about the strategy tabs in the Trade Manager. which are generally blank. Let me just uncheck this for a moment and click OK. And let's go here to my Trade Manager. I'm going to go to Trading Apps, open up the Trade Manager. All right. And if you look at the two tabs down here, Strategy Orders and Strategy Positions, they're blank. But if I come back here to my chart where my strategy is, my Bollinger Band strategy, and I format the strategy and I say, hey, generate the strategy orders, but for display in the Trade Manager Strategy Orders tab. When I do that and I click OK, I'm creating a link between this chart and the Trade Manager. So when I come here to my Trade Manager window, now my strategy positions is showing me the 3 entries for Apple: long 500, long 500, and long 500. Remember that we have 3 trades for Apple, and it's displaying those trades here. They're losing trades, but at least I can see how the strategy is submitting information to the Trade Manager. And notice how these are strategy positions. These are different than your positions. If I go here to positions, is blank because those positions are not real. But if I go here to my strategy orders is blank because I have no active orders. Let me show you how we can have an active order. We can have an active order by submitting some sort of a stop loss. Let me go to Insert Strategy. I'm going to do a stop loss, and I'm also going to combine it with a profit target. So not only have a stop loss, but I have a profit target. I'm selecting both using my Control key. I'm not going to format them. I'm just going to put them on the chart. And I have those exits on my screen. Maybe I should have edited, because now if I go to my Trade Manager, my strategy positions, I'm flat Apple, and my strategy orders has nothing. Let's go ahead and edit those so that I can have a better view. My stop loss is set to 1. I'm going to set it to 5. And my profit target is set to 5 points. I'm going to set it to 10 points. And then click on Close. Okay, I think it's still very tight. I still have nothing. Let me do 10 points on my stop loss. I just want to make sure that you can see the position. If I go over here to my Trade Manager, now I see that I'm long 500 on my strategy. I'm losing money, but if I go to my strategy orders, now I have 2 active orders. These are strategy status. They're active orders. One is for my target and one is for my stop. One is waiting for Apple to drop to $90.55. The other one is waiting for Apple to go to 110.55 to exit as a profit target. So you can see the 2 orders that are active waiting to manage this position that is long 500. Again, I reiterate, these are not real orders yet. These are not real positions yet. We are just connecting the strategy to the Trade Manager so that we can monitor the information, the positions, and the orders. My Orders tab, which is the main orders, is blank, and my Positions tab is blank because I haven't turned on the strategy for execution. Of course, I can come here to my strategy here on the graph, format the strategy, and now there's another checkbox that says Automate Execution using, and you see how the account is grayed out. I'm going to put a check there. When you put a check there, you get this little disclaimer telling you what are the risks when you turn this on. You just have to be aware that this is turning on the strategy for execution. So you do have to read the disclaimer, and if you agree, now your account is there. And one of the good things about TradeStation is that this is my simulated account. So you don't have to risk your own capital to test a strategy. You can run it on a simulator and see how the strategy fills those orders in real time. It's interesting that I have confirmations on. That's the first level of automation. The strategy is going to monitor your criteria. It's going to generate trades, but it'll always give you a confirmation window. It will not fill a trade unless you click OK or you click yes to that confirmation. That's confirmation on. So it's an automated strategy, but it does require your interaction to click yes and no for those strategy orders. But we can take this a step further and say, I want confirmations turned off. You get another nice disclaimer letting you know, hey, just be careful. Now you're really going to have to, be aware of your computer and see what's happening, because now the strategy is going to be on its own entering trades for you. If you agree, this is called a fully automated strategy. And if I click OK, the strategy is turned on. The SA indicator right here on the top left corner tells me that the strategy is automated. If I look at the chart, it's being monitored tick by tick. If I go to my trade manager, of course it hasn't generated any orders. I see no orders, and I see no positions because it hasn't filled me. But if I go to my strategy positions, notice what's happening here. Because my strategy position is long 500, but my open position is flat. So there's a mismatch. It's comparing what my strategy has with what my live account has, and you can see how the position match says false. There's a false position match. You can force it so that it matches, but at this point, we can let the strategy run until it catches on and it syncs up with the real account. You can do it manually if you'd like. For example, I can come here and I'd say order bar, 500 shares of Apple. I am long 500. So if you wanted to enter a long trade, I'm filled. Now you can see how the position match says true. Strategy position is long 500. Open position is long 500. Okay. Phil has a good question. When you automate a strategy, does the window have to be active in order for it to generate trades? Let's use this view for an example. What you're looking at here on my TradeStation is my trade manager. I don't see the chart. I don't see the strategy that's running in the background. But the fact that the workspace is open, right here I have the tab open, means that TradeStation is still counting it and still running real-time data onto that chart, and the calculations are happening tick by tick. Even though I don't have it on the screen, I know that it's open somewhere in my TradeStation and all the calculations are happening. The only way that the strategy would stop is by you closing that workspace or shutting TradeStation down. TradeStation does have to be running in order for the strategy to run as well and generate orders if it needs to do so. Now, Vincent has a question about both orders. I believe he's referring to both orders that I have here in strategy orders, the profit target and the stop loss. The strategy has an engine that calculates how close your orders are to the current market. So if the current market is getting closer to your stop, it'll have your stop in place. But as the current market gets closer to the target, it'll remove the stop and then send the target. So there's an engine there monitoring the price very closely, and it'll decide which order to send. Phil is asking about 1 minute. Most certainly, you can change the interval of this chart to anything you'd like. If you change this to a 1 minute, of course, it's going to prompt you, a change has been made to the strategy. Do you like to disable the strategy automation? I'm going to say no. Keep it automated. Okay, so now it's being automated. If I look at my trade manager, some more orders are in here because it had to remove a lot of these orders. This is on a 1 minute. Oh, that's because I have multiple entries. I have the position match is false because in my strategy position I have 1500, but not in my open position. That's because I came here, and when you go to format strategies, I had this pyramiding turned on, but I can turn that off, and now the position match should be true. Well, still false because the strategy is short and I'm long 500. So it's interesting that if you make a change to the strategy, just be aware of what's in your real account so that you can match it and have it in sync. Okay. Okay, there's two advanced tools that are called Portfolio Maestro and Walk Forward Optimizer. Let me just describe what they are, and then you can choose to whether you use them or not. In the back test that we did for Apple, there's just one symbol. What if we wanted to use the same strategy, but on a group of symbols? If you wanted to backtest a strategy on a group of symbols, you need a special tool called Portfolio Maestro. Otherwise, you're going to have to run the backtest on each symbol individually. When I go to my trading apps, I have a button called, let me come here again. It's right here called Portfolio Maestro. If you don't have it in your trading apps, it's probably because you haven't subscribed to it. There's an additional fee for Portfolio Maestro as there is for Radar Screen. But for Portfolio Maestro is the tool that allows you to do the same back test that we did here, but on a group of stocks. Because sometimes, you know, I've grabbed the 100 symbols that are part of the NASDAQ, and I apply the strategy to see which symbols work and which symbols don't. I just got a filled order here. Let's see what happened here. My positions, I'm long 1,000 shares. That's because the chart generated a signal here. I'm not sure if you heard the confirmation, but my strategy entered into a long trade and added 500 shares to my position. And with those 500 shares, I have my selling transaction with a limit order. That's my target. It's interesting that the strategy is running in the background and it generated a trade in real time. Lance, you make a good question about the computer entering sleep mode. It all depends on the level, you know. Some sleep mode could be, you know, the screensaver. If it's a screensaver, it's fine because the hard drive is still running. But there are some settings on the computer where after some time, the hard drive goes to sleep. If that's the case, then your TradeStation stops calculating. So these are settings that you have to configure in your Windows so that your hard drive is always on and is always running in the background. Eugene, your question about backtesting Forex pairs, yes, you can. The same features, the same functionality applies to all asset classes. And Phil, you have a good question about backtesting strategies on a simulator at the same time that you're accessing your live account. If you want to have your simulated account and your live account running at the same time, you're going to need two separate username and passwords. If you only have one username, you can only be active in one environment at a time, either the simulator or the live. But I know a lot of users that call client services and ask them for an additional login to TradeStation. They get one, so they have one computer connected to the simulator, and they have the other computer connected to the live account. That is possible, but you'd have to talk to client services, and they can set one up for you. It does incur additional data fees, so just keep that in mind. It's not something that is given out for free, because you do have to subscribe for data and so forth on that second TradeStation account. Eugene asking, can you backtest your own developed strategy? Most certainly. The strategies that are in TradeStation are just strategy components. We never say that the strategies that are in TradeStation are complete, because you do have to mix and match different components to complete your strategy. But if you have your own customized strategy, the one that you created yourself, yes, that strategy can be backtested the same way that we backtested the strategy components here on TradeStation. So we talked about Portfolio Maestro to do backtest on a portfolio of symbols. And we also have another tool here on the trading apps called the Walk Forward Optimizer, which enhances your optimization functionality. We talked about optimization. If you remember, we did the optimization of a stop. So it went through the whole series of numbers, and we were able to find optimal parameters. But when you use optimization excessively, you're going to be curve fitting the strategy to historical data. And we know curve fitting is the worst mistake that a strategy developer can make, because the strategy only works on historical data. Once you turn it on for real time, it never does the same thing that it did historically. So we need to avoid curve fitting a strategy to historical data. The walk forward optimizer is a tool that allows you, or that helps you, get more realistic results when you optimize. Where to get information about Portfolio Maestro and walk forward optimizer? When you come here to TradeStation, let me come here to our website. And let's go over education, and you're going to click on University, Education University. There is a tab dedicated to strategy trading. So when you go to strategy trading, you have a section here on the left side that talks about Portfolio Maestro, and we have one that has video tutorials. If you go to video tutorials, we have one for the walk forward optimizer. It's about an 18-minute video, talks about the functionality there. You can take a look at that one. But if your interest is Portfolio Maestro, then you can come here to the Portfolio Maestro category, and we have some videos here that talk about that functionality as well. All right. That's all the information that I had for this class. Hopefully you can start using some of the backtesting functionality. I think it's great functionality that allows you to test trading ideas against historical data. And maybe you're not a fan of automating a strategy. Maybe you don't want to take it that far. But the fact that you can take that idea and test it, it does allow you a full understanding of how the strategy generates your trades in relationship to the market data. So it does give you a different perspective about your trading idea and a certain confidence about what rules you use to enter and exit the market. So it's great information, even if you just want to use it for backtesting purposes and not automation. But that was it. Remember that tomorrow we're going to do lesson number 7. Our title tomorrow is Real-Time Scanning Using Analysis Techniques in Radar Screen. So tomorrow's all about radar screen and how we can scan the markets using technical analysis. Again, the class tomorrow is at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. I want to say that it was a great pleasure spending these 90 minutes with all of you today. The room will stay open for the next couple minutes, so if you have any comments or any last minute questions, please submit them. But for me and everyone else here at TradeStation, thank you for your time and have a good day. Bye-bye.